It is celebration time in the state of Georgia. Bulldogs win. Jackets win. Falcons win. Can the momentum keep going on this week? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of ATL Prime Sports, episode 208 to be exact. Joining me this evening is our wonderful producer, Wayne Ridenauer, all the way in Memphis, Tennessee. On assignment are my friends, JJ, my man, Get You On, Jurjevich. As also a Todd Corder, out calling some baseball umpiring and overseeing some groups of soon-to-be umpires in baseball. Of course, you got myself, Larry Gardner. You can find us on ATL Prime Sports at ATL Prime Sports on Facebook, X, I call it Twitter and always will, Instagram, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you consume or retrieve your podcast. We have got an excellent show on tap for you today. Our very own Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, will join us with a Panther Report to talk about all things Georgia State. We're going to talk a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons and their victory on Sunday Night Football up in Minnesota against the Vikings. And we're going to talk a little bit of Georgia Bulldog, Georgia Tech football, as both teams are undefeated, and some excitement that took place in Neyland Stadium for Georgia and on the flats in Bobby Dodd Stadium for Georgia Tech. You can find our individual Twitters at JJ Get You One for JJ Jurjevich, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Ty for TC Todd Corder, and at LG the number 4 Real Though for myself, Larry Gardner. Wayne, sir, how are you doing this evening?
Well, man, I'm doing pretty good, but I did catch some statistics that caught me off guard. ESPN put out some percentages of the college football teams, what their percentage they feel like right now of making the playoffs are. And, of course, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss, they're all up at the top, as well as University of Miami, which, hey, they're having a great start. I'm proud of them. But what I was mostly proud of was the fact that Memphis got on there at 28%, and Auburn is at 24%. So I think they're letting us know that there's still a chance.
Listen, there is, in the words of the great movie from Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's still a chance. And there always is. You never know. The one thing I can tell you that I've learned since the expansion of the college football playoff is the crazier and the zanier the month of December is, the happier everybody is involved. Because more money's flowing through the schools, more money's flowing through the networks. We all spending more money to try to watch it on TV with the streaming services. And that's something we probably need to have a conversation about, is how things are transitioning over to streaming services as opposed to just generic cable as back in the day, you know, and the way we have to consume our content now for sports. But I'm telling you, just the early on predictions, you know, and there's really not a juggernaut. You know, even Ohio State, they still look good, but they don't look juggernautish yet. But it's still early. Let's have this conversation again come about around the end of November. And once everybody starts to shake out a little bit.
Yeah, once they get into their conference play, I think we'll get to better ideas of what these schools are all about.
No, absolutely. You are absolutely right. And to kick off our first topic, Wayne, the Atlanta Falcons were able to go up to Minnesota and just absolutely show out. The first time I can remember, probably since 2017, maybe even 2018, that the defense came away with not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 sacks on the defense. Let me tell you something. Look, Wayne, look, and I'm gonna share my point, but tell me what you thought about the Falcons defense and the way that they performed up in Minnesota.
Man, I really like seeing that type of edge rush and that intensity. And, you know, they also, you can't do that kind of thing without good coverage. So, you know, if he didn't have anybody to throw to, it's not like he's just going to eat it on his own. And there was a few times where I thought he may have thrown it away intentionally, but that's up to the referees to decide.
No, you're absolutely right. And I tell you, man, and the rookie class, you know, we have all been very critical of Terry Fontenot. And some of the things that he has done in his tenure as Atlanta Falcons general manager. But I tell you what, it looks like so far this season that not only have his rookies that he's drafted shaken out, and he did some drastic things. And when your defense was as we could use a whole bunch of words, but I'm gonna be pleasant because I'm still in a good mood that the Falcons won.
Yeah.
When your defense is as porous as it was last season,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to go into damage control, and you drafted your two big edge rushers or your two big premier rushers in Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. They are absolutely being contributors early on here in this season. So to see the rookie class with Xavier Watts coming away with an interception, to see Divine Diablo and the free agent acquisition from the Las Vegas Raiders, who is playing linebacker for us now and doing a great job there in Atlanta. To see all the pieces finally come together. Jeff Ulbrich is doing some great things as the defensive coordinator. But again, I tell people, pump your brakes. The one thing that I've noticed so far is you still got red zone struggles.
Oh, yeah.
And you couldn't pick it Younghoe Koo because he wasn't on the bus or the plane.
No.
But hey, Romo came through 5 for 5 and extra and field goals. That could be the difference in 1-1 and 2-0 right now.
Yeah.
Just being able to make those field goals. And you look at the defensive side and you see the improvement. Can the offensive side do the same thing? Because, we had 236 yards of rushing between Bijan and Michael and Tyler Algier. If you can do that every game, you're gonna come away with a lot of success when it comes to wins and losses in the NFL. Don't you agree, Wayne?
Oh, yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to make a comment or post something on X, but I was too busy watching the game that the Atlanta Falcons absolutely looked their best on offense between the 20-yard lines. Because once they got in there, man, it was rough. And sometimes when they're stuck behind their own 20, I get a little bit weird. But that worries me about any team. I don't care who it is.
Well, and you're right. And I'll even pose this question to you, Wayne. I think we're seeing some red zone struggles early on from Michael Penix, because even in looking at some replays, the first time when they went down, he had Kyle Pitts wide open on the inside slant route, wide open touchdown. He just didn't see him. I think it was the second, maybe the third time in the red zone. He had Darnell Mooney wide open in the right corner flat for a touchdown and didn't see him. So I think what's happening is he's having to process so much when he gets inside of a closer range that he doesn't have the room to move and navigate things as well. I think that's going to come with time. I think people tend to forget this is only his 6th start as an NFL quarterback, and it's much more different than what things were up in Seattle as a quarterback of the Washington Huskies. So, so Wayne, we got Carolina this coming week, who has gotten bit by the injury bug as well, to say the least. But as we look at the schedule that the Falcons have, a lot of people that they're playing here in their first 5 games are all getting hit with the injury bug. My question, Wayne, is what are you more pleased with, the Falcons defense or the coaching that Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, and Jeff Ulbrich have been able to do so far this season?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of both, but the coaching is a difference I can see there, and I think it has to do with not only play calls, but having options for the quarterback. It's just this quarterback, going back to your comment on him transitioning to the NFL. The NFL is such way faster of a game. I took the opportunity way back when we were working with VCRs and having to record games we couldn't watch. I watched a college game, early Sunday morning. And then right after that, I watched NFL game. And I was just blown away by the difference in speed from the time that ball snaps till the whistle blows. And it's something that's why I feel like sometimes rookie quarterbacks should not be starters, because it's such a fast game.
You're absolutely right. Not only that, think about it. And I know we're going to sound like the old men on the porch drinking brewskis and whatnot, but, in our heydays, rookies were drafted and they were able to sit on the bench 2, 3, sometimes 4 years before they were even looked upon to be able to be a contributing factor to these teams. And now you got a quarterback fresh out of college, and you're handing them the keys to the Lamborghini to drive your entire franchise.
Yeah.
You got to be built differently mentally to be able to handle that type of pressure, number one. But number two, what you do is you find out real quick if what you got is a wasted draft pick. And I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing is so many number one draft picks, like in the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes that are being quarterbacks, are given the keys to the city and locking up because you're basically having to consume what realistically used to be 3 years worth of information in about 3 months, and then being forced to execute it as well. So
exactly.
Michael Penix has done a great job so far. His expectations are, I would say, above average. I wouldn't say they were great. I say they are above average. He's been able to execute so far, but there's still some nuances of Zach Robinson's playbook that he's still got to master. And I believe once he does, I think the city of Atlanta, with the offensive pieces that he has surrounding him, I think we're going to be in for what I would like to call an exciting end to the 2025-2026 campaign. And we are now pleased to be joined by the legendary, one and only, often imitated but never duplicated, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Dave Cohen joins us with the Panther Report. Dave, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm pretty good, Larry and Wayne. Sorry I'm a little late, but great to be with you guys as we get ready to go to Nash Vegas for Georgia State and Vanderbilt on Saturday night.
Nash Vegas, a town that is wonderful to be in, and you guys showed up and showed out a little bit here this past weekend with a win against Murray State, 37-21. I think that was your first win of the campaign. That said, Dave, tell me what stood out to you the most about Georgia State's performance against Murray State?
Well, one of the things that we'd said on the radio about Ole Miss and then about Memphis, and Wayne came to Atlanta. He was at the game at Center Parc Stadium. Our top receiver is Ted Hurst, and he was targeted 6 times with 1 reception against Ole Miss. Again, not a huge factor in the Memphis game. Murray State obviously would open up some more opportunities. You got to get the ball in the hands of your number one playmaker, and he's our number one playmaker, and had a great afternoon, 10 catches, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Let your best players do their work. And so T.J. Finley, the starting quarterback, Cameron Brown, who played most, if not all, of the second half, did a good job locating their number one receiver, Ted Hurst, and, he did a lot of good things. Ran the ball pretty well, totaled 454 yards of total offense. Branson Robinson, the transfer from Georgia, been a lot of interested Panther fans to see what kind of an impact he was going to have at Center Parc Stadium. The number that stuck out, he rushed for 65 yards, but averaged 8.1 yards per carry, and that's a great number right there. Rashad Amos, 56 rushing yards, scored a touchdown, his first as a Georgia State player, averaging 5.1 yards per rush. So, and again, I understand it's Murray State. And listen, Murray State is not Memphis, and Murray State is not Ole Miss, and Murray State is not Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is in the top 25 for the first time after taking South Carolina to the SEC woodshed in Columbia last Saturday. And I'm sure that Vanderbilt remembers losing a 36-32 decision to Georgia State last year here in Atlanta. So anybody that thinks that they're not aware of who Georgia State is this time around, and I don't say that like we're world beaters. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, last year, there's no doubt in my mind that they rolled into Atlanta. They thought they were going to roll us at the stadium, and they thought they'd get back on the bus with a big old W and get back to Nashville, and they found out differently. And so, that being said, there's no question the second time around that they're not going to take Georgia State football lightly.
No, Dave, and that was one of my next points is about, is there a revenge factor involved in this game coming up? And, Does the coaching staff approach it any differently? Do they make any strategic adjustments? Do anything? Is there some added juice here just because they remember what took place last year?
Normally, Larry, I would agree with you, except for the fact that we've got in and around 70 new players on the Georgia State roster who were not here last year when we played. Again, I would go back to a guy like a Ted Hurst who caught the winning touchdown against Vanderbilt. Sure, he remembers, and let's not look at it any other way. It's been a great week of practice so far from what I've seen as I've been out there. But this is a great opportunity for Georgia State to go on the road and take down what is now a top 20 Vanderbilt program on their home field. Georgia State fans would remember the feeling heading up to Knoxville in 2019. Nobody gave Georgia State a shot to win that football game, but they came out. They were ready to play. They made plays on both sides of the ball, and we ended up leaving Knoxville with a win. First win over the SEC. Second win over the SEC. SEC opponent was last year over Vanderbilt. So another opportunity, to make people kind of stand up and look at Georgia State football and take a closer look. And look, with Diego Pavia back at quarterback, certainly he remembers the game from a year ago, as does their head coach, Clark Lee. I'm sure they're going to be very, very well prepared. You saw last year how they turned on a dime when they got back to Nashville after losing to Georgia State. Who did they beat?
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you. And
they beat Alabama.
Yeah. I was like, both times you got back-to-back times where you had big-time names and you got shell-shocked, for lack of a better term, and then you had to go shell-shock somebody else.
Yeah, it's almost like watching an avalanche.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So as much as Georgia State will, have to be functioning on all cylinders offensively, and I think, Wayne, we may have talked about this last week when we briefly mentioned upcoming Georgia State and Vanderbilt. Over the months, as we've talked about the NIL and its impact on college athletics, and then drill down one level to college football, I think from a percentage standpoint, if you look at what are there, 16 teams? How many teams are in the SEC now?
16? Yeah, I think it's about,
I think it's 16.
Right.
Okay, so we all know the resources that a Texas and an Oklahoma
Florida,
and a Georgia and an Alabama and an Auburn and a Florida, we all know the resources they've had and the advantages they've had. Anybody that knows anything about Vanderbilt and the history of the university, and when I'm not claiming to be a Vandy historian, but they've got dollars.
Yeah.
And so NIL has allowed them, percentage-wise, I think, to become a better football program from where they were to where they are now than any other team in the SEC. In other words, they've made the largest jump in getting better from where they were pre-NIL to where they are now because they've got money. They're in the Southeastern Conference. They've got I don't want to call it a brand new stadium, but they just sunk a ton of money into that stadium at First Bank Stadium in Nashville. They've got really nice facilities. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when the SEC office distributes all of the bowl money and the TV money and all of the revenue that comes in, that those huge dollars that go to Alabama and Texas and Auburn and Georgia, Vanderbilt's waiting in line just like the rest of those teams, and they're getting that same amount of money. Money is not an issue from someone on the outside looking in as myself at Vanderbilt. And so they've been able to attract, I think, a caliber athlete that in the past they were not able to attract. Now that they have NIL money, they've got outstanding facilities. They're in the Southeastern Conference. There's really nothing, in my opinion, anymore that holds them back other than, okay, people think Vanderbilt, they're not very good. It's not a competitive program. I don't think that's the case anymore. And I'm not saying it just because Diego Pavia is there. I think Vanderbilt, and I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC and play for a national championship. What I'm saying is they're not going to be the doormat that they've been in the SEC over these last however many years and decades, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, I kind of had one question in regards to this NIL and how it's, in my opinion, I feel like it has really balanced the field between the larger conferences and some of the smaller conferences because of players moving around so that they can not only get more playing time, but have more opportunity in NIL. Do you think that there's a chance that in the future, because of the parity that's working out now, when schools like Georgia State are invited to go to Ole Miss and they're paid a certain amount of money to do so, because of the parity and the chance of a big school like Ole Miss losing, do you think that the payout to a school like Georgia State will start getting lower and lower as time goes on?
I would venture to say probably not. I think what we're going to see now that the SEC is going to a 9-game conference schedule is that there's only going to be 3 non-conference games for each SEC school to schedule. So who is that 4th non-conference game going to be, and which school's going to fall by the wayside? In the case of, let's just use Georgia State at Ole Miss as an example. Okay, so Ole Miss is moving forward going to play 9 conference games. That leaves 3 to be scheduled. They're probably going to play at least 2 games that are of interest to the fan base, possibly a Memphis or name a school, an in-state school in Mississippi. So that leaves 1 game, right?
Yeah.
So could that, the 4th game that's going to go away in the non-conference portion of the schedule, that trickle-down effect is more than likely going to affect a group of 5 program or an FCS program, and that's a loss of revenue for that group of 5 or FCS. And, Sunbelt schools and Conference USA schools and MAC and Mountain West, they're not playing with the same kind of financial budgets that the Power 4 programs are playing with. So that money is very meaningful. And that'll be a loss, whoever, whatever group of 5 or FCS ends up getting bumped, because there's now only 3 non-conference games per SEC school as opposed to there being 4. But I don't think the payouts will be any less, because look at it this way. When the SEC renegotiates that television contract, is it going to be for less or is it going to be for more?
Especially when there's more games now.
The rich get richer. That 9th SEC game is going to create that much more revenue per school per season.
Well, see, I didn't even think of that perspective, but that is cool that you brought that up.
Yeah. It's all about chasing dollars. It always has been, only now it's just become even more evident. Everybody is looking for that next revenue stream, whether it's selling beer and alcohol on the campus stadium, which for years did not happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's, selling anything within the stadium, jerseys, hats. I mean, just anything to create an additional revenue stream. Because it's like being in sales, guys. It's like, okay, well, I just sold $1 million contract, and then the manager comes over and says, "Great," gives you a pat on the back and says, "Now go sell another one."
Yeah,
So they create one revenue stream, and everybody celebrates for 5 minutes, and you'll hear, "Oh, we're gonna build a new practice facility, or we're gonna build a new basketball arena," and the money is already spent. Now they got to go and create more revenue. Yeah. It's like it never ends.
Yeah. Dave, you're listening to ATL Prime Sports. We're joined by the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, Dave Cohen. You can find him on Twitter. Y'all call it X at GA State Voice. Dave, you talked about how the money that Vanderbilt always had access to is now helping them compete, where in days past, they were getting the 2- and 3-star recruits. Now you're starting to see them sprinkle in some 4-star recruits. My question is, as far as it pertains to Georgia State and some of that same aspect, You know how you talked about Mr. Hurst and his great performance last week. Who else would you say is due for a breakout performance, or somebody that's under the radar that fans may not necessarily know of that could potentially have a big game against Vanderbilt?
Well, I mentioned him once already that, we've got 4 or 5 brand new running backs. And, Branson Robinson, I think, got caught up in a numbers game, also dealing with an injury while he was over in Athens. I was excited when I got the news that he was transferring. His relationship goes back with Coach Del McGee, because Coach McGee was the running backs coach and was one of their main recruiters when he was over in Athens for 8 years. So he knows exactly, or knew exactly, what he was recruiting and knew exactly what he was bringing into the Georgia State program after having coached him briefly over in Athens. I would love to see Branson Robinson and Rashad Amos, another guy that has, some SEC history. DJ Braswell, who played briefly, spent some time at South Carolina. These guys they've been on the SEC stage. So walking out on the field is not going to be intimidating for them, as far as I know. I mean, I'm not speaking for them, but my guess is that it wouldn't be. They've been on that stage before. If you've played at, Sanford Stadium at Athens, okay, you've played in front of 100,000 people. If you've played at Bryant-Denny Stadium, you've played in one of the premier football facilities in the United States. And I know Michigan and Notre Dame and so on and so forth. But I would love to see a Branson Robinson, a DJ Braswell, a Rashad Amos, with regards to our run game, really come out and have a fantastic afternoon running the ball, against an SEC caliber defense like Vanderbilt. And obviously they're pretty good, because they held South Carolina to but a touchdown this past Saturday in Columbia. And, kudos to them. The leaders on the defense, Josiah Robinson, who was the guest on our pregame radio show last week, led us with 9 tackles, a tackle for loss, a fumble recovery. He's going to have a big afternoon. Another one of the newcomers that's going to have a big afternoon, wearing the jersey number 9, and that's Marlon Dean. Coach and I talk about disruptors, and Diego Pavia has proven to everybody he's an outstanding collegiate-level quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to believe this guy spent, 2 seasons at New Mexico State, and in his journey has beaten both Auburn at Auburn as a New Mexico State quarterback, and has beaten Alabama at Alabama as the Vanderbilt quarterback. So when I say disruptor, as best we can, because that our defensive line will be going up against a larger, heavier, possibly more skilled O-line for Vanderbilt. But to be able to get some penetration into the backfield and not allow Diego Pavia to, what we'll call calmly in football terms, under control football terms, run their offense. In other words, we got to create a little bit of disruption and get him out of the pocket and try to force him into making some errors, either when throwing the football or tucking and run. Coach McGee talked earlier this week at our Tuesday media conference about they still run some semblance of a triple option type offense.
Yeah.
And throw in the run pass option, which I always get a kick out of run pass option. What else can you do with the football except kick it? Obviously, you're going to run it, you're going to pass it, or you're going to kick it, right?
or fumble it.
Or fumble it. But I think the disruptors are going to play a huge role, hopefully, for Georgia State to not let their offense get into any sort of a rhythm. And I say that early in the football game, and kind of put Georgia State offensively on an even stand with Vanderbilt. And I'm not saying that's going to be an easy gig. They're 3-0. They've got wins over Charleston Southern. They took part in chasing a coaching change at Virginia Tech. And again, we saw what they did to South Carolina last Saturday. So it's a tall order, Vanderbilt is not the Vanderbilt that we'd become accustomed to thinking about when people said Vanderbilt. Great academic institution, less than stellar football. That's not the case anymore. That's a top 20 program, and they showed why last Saturday. And so it's going to be a tall order. And going back to what we said at the very outset of this interview, Georgia State is not a secret to them because of what happened last year.
Dave, got one more for you, and we'll let you run. Based on what you've seen early on this season, and this team is extremely young, and you've mentioned that several times throughout several interviews about the youth and the vitality of this team. As far as Sunbelt is concerned, do you even have an inkling of a chance that Georgia State can compete and be competitive against their Sunbelt Conference foes? And if so, what is your outlook for this, not only for this season, but if they can continue to take this momentum into next season, what's your kind of outlook as far as the Sunbelt is concerned?
Well, Larry, that's kind of a two-part question. I'll answer the second part briefly. With regards to next year, I have no idea. Rhetorical question. Will we come back next year and have 60 or 70 new players again?
True. Will
our best players decide to transfer out at the end of the season? Rhetorical question. I don't know. We're going to find out early this year what Georgia State's competitive capability is, because after Vanderbilt, there's an off week. And then we continue the gauntlet with back-to-back home games against James Madison, who's picked to win the Sun Belt East, Appalachian State, who maybe is not at the level of App State football that we've become accustomed to, but we still have not beaten them in Sun Belt football. So I'm not taking them lightly. And luckily for us, both games are in Atlanta this year. And then that third Sun Belt game is on the road down I-75 to I-16 East to the borough to take on Georgia Southern.
Yep.
And so we're going to find out against those three schools back to back to back what's going to happen. And I don't know. I mean, the Georgia Southern game is always interesting. Are we talented enough on paper? Yes, I think. It's tough to tell. I know James Madison has gotten beaten up a little bit. I think they lost to Louisville, a week, 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
They're one of those Sun Belt schools that is capable of taking down a Power 4. Appalachian State has been one of those schools. I don't know that they are now. I think a school in the Sun Belt East that right now, I don't want to say nobody's talking about them. If you're in the Sun Belt, you are, is Old Dominion. They kind of made people take a closer look with their win over Virginia Tech, and that was not a close win. They thrashed Virginia Tech, which ultimately, after Vanderbilt got done with them, Old Dominion got them, and they made a coaching change. So Old Dominion could be one of those schools in the Sun Belt East that right now we're not really looking at as a potential Sun Belt East division champion, but they could very well be.
You're absolutely right, Dave. And it's just, when I saw the schedule, I said, man, they didn't do them any kind of favors. I mean, once you get through with Vandy and then you talked about it, man, you get a chance to, rest up and get prepared, but then you got back to back to back. And you're absolutely right. We're going to find out one way or another if this Panther team is ready and if Coach McGee has got them boys, focused and ready to handle the business at hand. And we're going to find out starting this coming Saturday. Dave, tell them where they can get the game and tell them where they can listen to you at, my friend.
All right, as always, our Atlanta flagship radio station is the 50,000-watt, 88.5 FM WRAS. It's also streaming at WRAS.org. You can find it on the Radio Garden app. I don't know if you guys have that app, but it's a great app. I thoroughly enjoy it. Our affiliates this week will be WGTJ 97.5 FM, Gainesville, Georgia, WIOL 95.7 FM, Columbus, Georgia. And those radio stations are all available on the Radio Garden app. You can also listen live on each of their websites. And another fantastic website for not only Georgia State football, but for high school football out in the Savannah, Brunswick area. They carry everything for us, is lowcountryradio.com online. And those guys do a fantastic job with their high school football coverage. And then they, of course, bring you the audio of Georgia State Football Radio Network as well. So multitude of ways to listen. I'm looking forward to getting to Nashville. Last time I was there, I was up there a couple of times for non-sporting event reasons. But we were up there with Georgia State basketball, lost a 2-point game at Belmont University for basketball.
Yep.
So this will be the first sporting event back there since we played that game a couple of years ago. And we'll be on the air at 7 o'clock with our Panther pregame show, countdown to kickoff, and we'll kick it off 7:30 p.m. Eastern time or there and abouts from First Bank Stadium at Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Yeah. Well, you all have a safe trip, and hope you all have a great game.
Well, I hope so too. Fingers crossed, and hope we play well. Be great to get out of the Music City with a W, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys next week.
All right.
Dave, thank you so much for coming on as always. And again, you can catch them on all the stations and affiliates. Catch them live, 7 o'clock, Nashville, Tennessee. Dave, once again, thank you so much, my friend. Have a good evening.
All right, Larry, great job hosting, and great job always weighing up there in Memphis. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you so much, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, and they're getting ready to head up the road, up I-24 to Nashville, Tennessee, to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. And
yeah. Now, one thing I did want to mention, you had talked about being on the road. I think one of the reasons that JJ couldn't join us tonight is because he's prepping for a, Savannah State versus Miles College game. Is that right?
He's going to be on the road, on the road at Miles College
down in
HBCU action.
Down in Alabama.
Yeah, in Alabama. So catch him. I think that game is actually going to be broadcast on ESPN3, I think.
I think it's Plus. Yeah,
okay.
And it's Saturday at 3 p.m.
Saturday, 3 p.m. kick. You can catch our very own JJ Jurjevich being able to continue to sink his teeth into some play-by-play action. And I know he's getting a kick out of it because, we went to school together to do this kind of stuff. So I hope you have a great and amazing call, JJ. I know it's a passion of yours, and we're rooting for you, buddy. We'll try to get you in and listen to it, and we'll transition now into our college football segment. We're going to touch on Georgia Tech just a little bit before we go into our Pick Six segment because that's going to take up a pretty good bit. But Georgia comes away with a 44-41 overtime victory after Tennessee kicker Max Gilbert misses a chip shot field goal with seconds to spare. Georgia Tech comes away and does the complete opposite as Aiden Burr, ice water in his veins. I was there to see it. 55-yard field goal to seal the deal and to open the floodgates, and the crowd goes wild and hit the stadium turf there at Bobby Dodd Stadium in Hyundai Field. Fans go nuts, take down the goalpost. Wayne, Georgia, and Georgia Tech are both undefeated. So I'm going to start with Georgia first. Was this game a result of Georgia just being lucky, or is Tennessee a real threat in the SEC this year?
Well, I picked them to be in the SEC championship game, which that took a little bit of a chink or whatever you call it out of the armor on that deal. But, I would not have picked them to win or be in the SEC championship game had I not thought they were great. But I'm as surprised, I'm not really that surprised that Georgia beat them and that it was a close game, but I hate to keep going back to this team, but Vanderbilt is the team that's really starting to surprise me in the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Gunnar Stockton came away 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think this was a surprise to a lot of people, but Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar, 371 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 of those to his prime target, Chris Brazil II, who had 177 of those yards and 3 of those touchdowns. Tennessee had some weapons, but you'll always hear me say this, and it's the one of the most famous Ric Flair quotes known to man. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And Tennessee, for some strange reason, with the exception of the the Hail Mary pass that Josh Dobbs threw in Athens several years ago.
Yeah.
Tennessee has not been able to beat Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, let's take this and go into the Georgia Tech Clemson game. You know, Clemson has not looked the part of what the Clemson that we're used to seeing under Dabo Swinney. And, you know, several media pundits have talked about his unwillingness to use transfer portal and NIL and all of these new resources that have become the college football of 2025 going into 2026. Same question, different teams. Is Clemson coming back down to earth, or is Georgia Tech starting to become a problem?
I think that the ACC altogether is becoming much more even, and that's why you see, you know, of course, FSU is a huge turnaround this year, but teams like Miami, and even a few years ago, you had some teams like what was it, the Demon Deacons?
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest was up there winning games. So I think that all the teams in the ACC have got a taste of how the portal works, how the NIL works. And I think they might be right about Dabo Swinney's resistance to that is costing the school some wins.
No, I agree. And, you know, most people thought preseason Cade Klubnik was going to be in the running for the Heisman. I think, you know, he and Texas quarterback Arch Manning were both like right neck and neck with the hype that was coming into the preseason. Yeah. And both of them, I mean, in my humble opinion, have not played to what we like to say in baseball. They have not played to the numbers that are on the back of the baseball card, you know. So Dabo's got some soul searching to do if he wants to get that Clemson program, because right now Miami doesn't look like they're going to slow down anymore.
Nope.
So you know, and I said that they were going to win the ACC. Florida State's looking like a totally different team than the Florida State team we saw a year ago. So, you know, where is Clemson? Are they going to continue to fall? Or is Georgia Tech going to start really making some noise and be able to compete with the Miamis, the Florida States? You know, because we've seen what they were able to do on the road in Colorado. You know, they handled Gardner Webb the way that they were supposed to handle them. They you know, I don't know why in the world I didn't think that they could cover at home against Clemson, but they did, and they won the game, and I'm glad that they did. I think, listen, by the time that you get the good old-fashioned hate, you know, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, that game is going to be bananas there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our Pick Six, the segment that everybody loves this time of year. 6 of the best football games from college and pro. Spreads are from today's ESPNBet.com spread lines, and we are going to talk about them all together. We do have the picks for both JJ and for TC. Wayne, first game, number 17, Texas Tech at 3-0. Heads to Utah, number 16, who is also 3-0. Utah is favored by 3.5. The over-under is 57.5. Game is going to be Saturday at noon on Fox. Wayne, what say you?
Well, you know, before I get started on this, I want to say that it looked like all the games we've got chosen here have a hook. And so that's going to cause me a lot of problems. But despite that, I am going to take Texas Tech in the points on this because I feel like they've got the momentum. And I think Utah is, I don't want to say they've been lucky, but I don't feel like they are playing quite as well as Texas Tech right now.
Now, I can understand that point. And before we even get to my pick on this one, let's go through everybody's records before I forget. I am 14-9 overall. I was 3-3 last week. Wayne, after a 5-1 week last week, is 15-8, a game ahead. TC 2-4 last week. He is 10-13 overall. JJ was also 3-3 last week, and he is 13-10 overall. So Wayne is in first. I am in second. JJ is in third, and TC is bringing up the caboose. I like what you got to say there, Wayne, about what Texas Tech is doing and what they've done up to this point in the season. I could go ahead and throw out and spit out a whole bunch of stats. But the main one that's going to convince me of my pick is Utah has been very tough to beat at home. And it's been this way for at least about the 4 or 5 years. And to your point, that hook is what's gnawing me at the craw. You know, but I'm gonna take Utah is going to cover, and I think they're going to be able to do this by either a 4-point spread or a 7-point spread. I think it's going to be that close. These two teams are very evenly matched. I think it's going to be a great football game, but I do think Utah is going to cover. TC has said that Utah is going to cover, and JJ also agrees that Utah is going to cover. So, Wayne, there's your opportunity to make up another game, baby. Open up the floodgates. Here we go.
All right.
The next game on our docket pits number 22 Auburn at 3-0. They will make the trip to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the number 11 ranked Oklahoma Sooners, who are also 3-0. Oklahoma is favored by 6.5 with a 48.5 total points over under. This game will be on ABC at 3:30 Eastern time. Wayne, tell me why the Tigers are going to win.
Well, I think the Tigers are going to win because I'm going to wish hard enough on every fallen star or North Star or whichever one. No, I'm going to pick Auburn because I feel like it's something that could happen. Oklahoma's a tough team. They're playing at Oklahoma, and I really feel like Auburn should be getting more points than this. But 6.5, that's just under a touchdown. I think Auburn will either lose by a field goal or just outright win. So I'm picking them to win.
Hey, hang on to that. TC says that Oklahoma covers. JJ also says that Oklahoma covers. And Wayne, here's you another opportunity to pick up 2 games in the pick 6 because I too am picking Oklahoma. Again, I could bore you with long stats. I could tell you what each team is going to do. Here's what I'll tell you. Oklahoma just thrashed Michigan at their own house. And Michigan so far to me, they were the more talented team. They just weren't the better team. And Oklahoma is playing, listen, I tell you what, Oklahoma is playing a brand of football I probably hadn't seen them play probably in 3-4 years. And Oklahoma is just, when they're playing this well, and Brent Venables has got them all on a mission, I believe. And when you see that, it can't help but say, hey, Norman, Oklahoma, Trae Young, all y'all got some special things coming on. The Red River Shootouts a couple of weeks away. So we'll see if y'all going to be able to handle Texas when they come to the building. But nonetheless, I'm taking Oklahoma to be able to not only cover, but I think they're going to win by at least 2 touchdowns. But we'll talk about that later. The third game on our docket pits number 9, the Illinois Fighting Illini at 3-0 against the number 19 Indiana Hoosiers, the next door rivalry. They're also 3-0. Indiana is favored 5.5. Total over under 52.5. This game will be a night contest. 7:30 p.m. on NBC. I'll give you my 2 cohorts sports there first. TC says that he's going to take Illinois in the points. JJ says Indiana covers. Wayne, what say you?
I'm taking Indiana to cover. And I don't really know why, because these are 2 Big Ten teams that are Big 12. I'm not even sure. If it were basketball season, I'd have more of an idea what to think. But in football, the last thing I remember about Indiana and football is watching the movie called Breaking Away, which is about bicycle racing.
You know what? You got to remember Indiana and their playoff run last year, Wayne. Yeah, you got to remember the Hoosiers in their Big Ten title run, and so they ran up into the bus. All that was the Ohio State Buckeyes. But I think a lot of people, I think they underappreciate the talent that the Indiana Hoosiers have been able to accomplish and accumulate on the football side. Everybody knows Indiana, just like you said. They know them for the basketball. They know it from the movie Hoosiers. They know Bobby Knight throwing chairs across the floor. most of the people in our neck of the woods know it because that's where Michael Penix Jr. started his football career before transferring to Washington.
Right.
You know, but for the first time in a long time, Indiana and Illinois play football with two teams both in the college football playoff. And I know it's early on.
Yeah.
They're both undefeated. Now, I don't want to give you a long-winded answer. We kind of running out of time. And I ain't going to give you no long-winded answer. Y'all, trust me on this. Indiana's going to win. Take Indiana.
All right.
They're going to do it. They're going to handle business, and I'll leave it at that.
All right.
I won't bore y'all why. I'll give y'all analysis when we have a little bit longer to talk about analysis. But that switches us over to the NFL side of things. First NFL game we got, of course, the hometown team, the Atlanta Falcons at 1-1. Make the short trip up I-85 to take on the Carolina Panthers, Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Falcons, 5.5-point favorites with an over-under of 43.5. This game will be at 1 p.m. on Sunday on Fox. Wayne, why the Falcons going to win?
Well, I think the Falcons are going to win because they've got, they're playing a team that they historically have beat. I think didn't the Panthers beat them one game last year, but I think
last game of the year last year.
Yeah, and I think overall though the Falcons have won more games against the Panthers than the Panthers have. So that and the fact that I'm probably a very big Falcons fan is why I'm picking the Falcons to cover.
Hey, I understand, Wayne. TC says the Falcons cover. JJ says the Falcons cover, and we're going to be a clean sweep because I do think the Falcons are going to cover as well. 3 quick short points. Number one, Carolina's offensive line is injury rattled, and that's big at this type of game when it's a rivalry game. Bryce Young has got the experience. He had a great game against the Falcons at the end of the season last year, but it may be just too much to overcome. I think the Falcons are going to build upon the performance they had against Minnesota. I think Michael Penix is going to iron out some wrinkles. I think you're going to see him have a big game. I think this is going to be Drake London's breakout game. I think you're able to see him hit for 150-plus yards receiving. And I'm the same with you guys. Give me the Falcons. Take the points. Let's keep it pushing. Game number 5, the Los Angeles Rams. Yep, on the road at Lincoln Financial Stadium. The Philadelphia Eagles, who are also 2-0. Eagles are favored by 3.5. The over-under is 44.5. This game also will be at 1 p.m. on Fox. Wayne, what say you?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that spread should be farther. It should be a bigger spread for Philadelphia at home with the momentum that they've got and how they're playing. And that kind of worries me to pick the Eagles because it's so small, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway that they cover. And even though they shipped Gainwell up to, Pittsburgh, they still have Jake Elliott on their team. So one more Memphis player there, and that's a good reason for me to pick them.
Yeah, I think this game is actually going to be a field goal game. That's the reason I hate the hook on this one because Los Angeles has one of the best defenses in the league, and give the fact that Sean McVay is trying to overcome a plantar fasciitis tear from coaching so hard on the sidelines. What kind of heart do your coach have to be able to get himself to tear his plantar fasciitis as a coach? But man, the dude is legit. His team's legit. Puka Nacua is probably one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. The Philadelphia offense and defense has been lights out so far this season. However, I think the Rams defense is able to give them some fits. I'm going to take the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win this game by 1 point. I'm taking the Rams.
All right.
To cover that 3.5. Both TC and JJ also picked the Eagles to cover. Last game on our pick 6, the Arizona Cardinals at 2-0 make the trip to Levi Stadium to face the San Francisco 49ers, who are also 2-0. San Francisco is favored by 1.5. The over-under is 44.5. This game is the afternoon tilt, 4:25 p.m. on Fox. Wayne, talk to me. What you got?
Well, I'm going to pick the 49ers on this one. The point spread is pretty close, but this is going to sound like a real sentimental thing, but my wife's cousin's husband is a huge 49er fan, and he's going through some medical stuff right now, and prayers for him. But Elijah Beverly, I'm picking 49ers anytime we get him on here for you, man, and I want you to cheer for your team and make it through this.
Absolutely, man. Same thing. Our prayers and thoughts with him and his family too, as they continue to go through this and to continue on. TC is going to pick the 49ers to cover. JJ says he's taking the Cardinals and the points. He believes in the Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison connection, baby. He believes. Listen, I'm taking 49ers like you, Wayne, and I'm going to tell you this is Kyle Shanahan's system is so in-depth. It doesn't matter if it's Brock Purdy. It doesn't matter if it's Mac Jones. No Brandon Ayuk. No George Kittle. And they still win. It's all about the system. And until I see Arizona beat San Francisco, I will, in this matchup, rivalry game, division opponent, give me the 49ers to be able to handle business at Levi Stadium as well. That concludes our Pick Six segment for this week. We're going to be perfect, Wayne, with 1 hour on the dot with this broadcast. Let me tell you what we got going on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the content, like, subscribe, follow, share, tell the world, tell your people they can catch all of the ATL content that they look for here on ATL Prime Sports. Again, you can catch us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Might as well get a TikTok. We need one of them too. You see JJ doing one on a TikTok screen. Also, anywhere your podcasts are consumed, Spotify, Apple, Google, you can catch us there as well. As we wrap up tonight's show, Wayne, what is your final thought for the night, my friend?
Well, man, my final thought is this. Now, I don't know the demographic of the people that watch this show, but I can speak for myself. I don't have enough money to have a big screen TV on my patio, but I absolutely love going out on my patio with my little tablet, and setting it up and just listening to the birds, listening to the game. And occasionally I will look out in the yard and think, I'll probably take care of that sometime next week. But then I go back to the football. So watch a lot of football outside if you can.
Yeah, Wayne, to that point, I'm going to tell you what I ended up doing. Amazon projector. $70.
Wow.
$70. And you can hook the Bluetooth up to Bluetooth speakers, which I already have several of those out here. And you get big sound and a big screen.
Shoot, now I have all my neighbors will be coming over to party.
They will, man. They will.
All right.
They will. My final thought is a kind of a two-parter, man. There was a ridiculous rumor that was circulating about the death of former Atlanta Braves manager Bobby Cox. Number one, he is alive and well. Number two, or as well as he can be. But number two, in the world that we face and in the world that we live in today, man, sometimes check your resources out before you're so quick to share, retweet, repost. Double take. One of the things they taught us in journalism school, man, is read. Once you finish typing things out, read it again before you press send. Because once you press send, we're living in a world where you can take it back, but by the time you take it back, ain't no telling how many thousands of eyes have already laid eyes to what you've already pushed out and sent into the stratosphere. So, with tensions being how they are in our nation, and I know this is not a sports take kind of thing, but with tensions being the way that they are, with the way we have access to technology at our fingertips, learn how to practice the pause. Take the time to read what you're going to share just to make sure it's legit. Because in this day and age, with all the AI technology that's available to you, you may not be taking something real and forwarding it could be AI generated.
Right.
If you love the show, you tell your friends. Let them know the ATL Prime Sports has been in the building. For Wayne in Memphis, for Ty, who will be in Woodstock, for JJ in Lilburn, I'm Larry here in Adairsville, better known as LG. And as JJ would say, get you one. We'll see you next week.